Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani along with Grant Turrner. We are weighing in along with Mark Ostrander, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. GT doing GT things over the weekend on the road again at the Bill Farrell. Mark is on the train. He said to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone. GT, I hear strong things that Bill Farrell needs to be in my bucket list. Is that a correct piece of advice I'm getting?
Yeah, it's a really cool experience being at the New York Athletic Club and being in that kind of like small gym, basically within basically just like mat side, like almost like a kids wrestling tournament, but you're that much next to elite level athletes, more so than like in an arena where you're like up here, you can actually be like, oh my gosh, that's how big he is, or like, oh my gosh, he's so fast, or whatever it may be. He literally like walks off the mat through like folding chairs, and you can be like, within like a half a foot of him.
Yeah.
Or her.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah. A couple years ago, I think it was 2017. You probably remember when Nebraska held the World Team Trials. That's when Taylor and Jaden had that 3-match classic, and I got a chance to coach in the finals of the junior part. I was with my dad, and we'd gotten really good seats. That's before I was with track, but I wasn't with USA Wrestling then. And like I was literally sitting next to Kyle Snyder while he was eating a sandwich, and like I tell people this, and to be full disclosure, I said this when we were at track, when it had nothing to do, and maybe it was an event that Flo was doing when they were separate. USA Wrestling events are cooler from a fan experience than the Nationals. Like, you and me are lucky at Nationals. Like, I have a floor pass. You have a floor pass. You know everybody. I know a lot of people. So, like, we can walk up and talk to, and I'm not going to say 6 names because I don't want to delete 16 others. But we can talk to the people that everybody wants to talk about, or talk to, rather. Like, when you go to, like, the U.S. Open in Vegas, you maybe you can't get on the floor, but half the mats are up top, where you can literally be standing, like, right next to – like, I'll use Brian Smith as an example because I was there 10 days ago, like where he's coaching Kendrick Maple as an example. Like, you're right there. And these tickets are also cheaper than NCAAs, and hotels are cheaper than NCAAs. So, like, I mean, maybe hotels aren't cheaper in New York for Bill Farrell, but like most of these other events are amazing to be this close to them. So people should really, if you're a wrestling person and you follow the personal stories of these people, it's way easier to get autographs. It's way easier to get pictures. It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, once again, for the casual fan, like being able to like actually like rub elbows with guys. And once again, we have a very unique sport where, yeah, it is possible for you to be like next to, the all-time greats. And, like Jordan Burroughs was in attendance and he was just walking around with his kids and, things like that where it's, oh yeah, like that's just one of the greatest wrestlers in U.S. history.
Yeah.
Just right there for you.
Yeah. And I would say this too. A lot of these ladies and guys are very, very fan friendly. Like they'll stop, they'll take pictures, they'll sign autographs. They're not big timing people. And so what did you think of the wrestling? What stood out to you, like a match or two, or just a trend or anything like that?
I thought, I think it's Kent Chasday from Georgia who trains with like Valentine at the New York RTC. His match with Alex Marinelli was really cool to watch. Also, the match between, I want to say, I think it was the athlete from Kyrgyzstan wrestled Nick Lee in the finals, and that was just like crazy wrestling there. There was just so much great action.
How big of a threat is Nick Lee to make the team? Because in the 2020 trials, which were 21, he beat Yanni, and he beat Yanni pretty badly, like beat him by like 6 or 8 points. And he didn't just, I say just because it's a skill, but like if you're folk style influenced, like if I get a scramble and then I lace you 4 times, some people go, well, that doesn't mean he's better. right? Like, it's like you got caught, right? Anybody can get caught. But if you take me down 4 times or 5 times, like, okay, you're probably better. You won 5 scrambles, not 1 scramble. Like Nick Lee's a real dude at 65 come 2024, right?
Yeah, and he's only getting better. And he was already a force to be reckoned with in the 2021 Olympic trials process, where it was like, he just looked really good, but now he's focused solely on that. And I know that Penn State does a great job with their international athletes. So it'd be really cool to see like how this all comes together for him, and what does he have in store for all of us.
Well, you mentioned Penn State, which is Nittany Lion, same thing. So I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and you and me don't have any allegiance to anyone. I mean, you might have allegiance to a program that's a Nike program versus a non-Nike program because you talk to them more. But like, I know you're friends with almost everybody, and I think I'm fairly friendly with almost everybody. But Penn State reasonably on the Olympic team could have Gilman at 57, Lee or Zane at 65, Dake at 74, Taylor at 86, Snyder at 97, and I mean, Kirkfleet's going to be in the top 5 at heavyweight, but those other guys are all favorites pretty much.
Yeah.
Like not 65 because Yanni's a returning medalist, but Gilman, like if the Olympic trials are next year, Gilman would be sitting in Final X. Dake would be sitting in Final X. Taylor would be sitting in Final X, and Snyder would be sitting in Final X. Like that's crazy. Just absolutely crazy that one RTC would have literally 4/6 of the team sitting in Final X.
I think that's
and the trials are at Penn State.
Yeah.
So
right.
Get your popcorn ready for that.
Get your popcorn ready for all of that.
Yeah. The trials that's another thing. Like I don't know. I'm sure they're probably close to sold out, but people should be getting tickets as soon as they can for that. That's a once in a lifetime experience. I've been blessed. In 2012, I got to be on the floor. In 2021/20, I got to announce for 2 days. It's, I think when you're retired, and you're not doing stuff anymore, but you're trying to be great in other aspects of your life, being around greatness and literally feeding off that energy is pretty awesome. So anyway, so Bill Farrell looked awesome. I want to say 2 people that stuck out to me were Sammy Jones. Just it feels like he's mentally freer. Like he said, he's like, I'm just going to go hard the whole time. And a lot of Greco becomes very tactical at times. And, like, okay, you and me are going to hand fight. Maybe I win, maybe I lose, but it's just going to see who can lift or gut the other guy. And it feels like he's not going to settle for that. Now, he might lose. The reason why that strategy is in place is because a lot of times people's defense and counterattacks are so good. But it feels like he's wrestling freer, and he's a high ceiling guy. If he gets to his holds, he's very explosive. And then Braden Thompson continues to impress me as a high school kid. Lockport, Illinois, Oklahoma State commit. You can say now because he signed. Those 2 guys stuck out to me. I don't know if you agree that those guys were pretty impressive or what you thought about them.
Oh yeah, I mean, once again, like the brackets were so small, so you got to see like extremely like very anticipated matchups, and then also guys that like Braden Thompson, who's a young athlete that shelled out and looked really good, and you have journeyman guys that have been around and doing it for a long time, and then of course there was a great foreign wrestling federation contingency there, so it wasn't just like all Americans versus just all American teams, right? So it was like there were some really really good diverse looks and then potential matchups that ended up, surprising some people, I think. But I think it's for, especially within the Greco world, there were some great matchups between like Jesse Porter and Britton Holmes. Sammy Jones looked really good. I mean, I could go up and down the entire bracket and just be, oh yeah, that's great, right? So
well, you've been around a lot of great Greco lately because you're in Baku for the World Cup. So it's like, it's interesting because like I was telling somebody that watches the pod, and I was like, originally the plan was we'd have Grant help us in the summer months and Mark help us in the winter months. but both people's knowledge are bleeding over into the other subjects. And clearly, folk style. I think Mark, just by being around you and to a lesser extent me, is trying to raise his IQ in Greco and freestyle, and has done a really good job, but it's when you try to surround yourself with really smart people, hopefully the whole bar goes up. So you were at Bill Farrell. I was at the Life U Open, so I saw a bunch of your boys. So like big shout to Omi Acosta and Quentin Haynes and Cole and the rest of that crew. I'm sure it's very much like Grandview. Like I watched these dudes literally move like 12 mats and set everything up, and it reminded me, I don't know if I'm gonna call them the good old days, but the old days, There's parts of coaching I genuinely miss, really, and there's parts of coaching I'm like, I don't miss that so much. And herding cats to move mats, but those kids were actually on it. They set it up. I got to work with Nate again, Statiker, on the play-by-play, so shout out to him. He did a great job. Shout out to Flo for getting us on the air. So that was a lot of fun. Grandview wrestled Iowa State at Humboldt, which is Kevin Dresser's hometown. You were on your way back. The dual result was not competitive. There were some competitive matches, but Iowa State ended up getting all of them. Just from a perspective, you have a different perspective because you're not a fan of that meet. You were an Iowa State alum and a Grandview staff member. If you can don't take the emotions out of it. How cool is it to see those programs in a gym it looked like clearly the fire marshal should have been called. I say that in the best possible way. Like, that's awesome. And from a coaching perspective, your kids were in an environment that frankly are probably more nerve-wracking than nationals, because it's Iowa State, it's in Iowa, they're on top of you. Like, just what are some of your takeaways from that?
Well, I think from the standpoint from Iowa State's perspective, like Dresser doing that and then also kicking that off with Tony Erzlin, which was from Humboldt as well. So the head coach at Purdue.
Right.
It's so cool to see like where wrestling has been taken now. Like Dresser's taking it back to his alma mater high school, his alumni status there. We've gotten a chance to see, like the bout at the ballpark. Arizona State has wrestled inside theirs. I believe Missouri wrestled on their baseball diamond as well. And we've wrestled, same thing for North Carolina. And then also some of their, military things where they wrestled like on Fort
Yes, that was, as a guy like that, I love that. Yeah.
So I think with wrestling, it's basically so cool to give the athletes that kind of like, intense environment. Not to say that like, when you get inside the arenas, it's not intense, because trust me, like when you've wrestled inside Gallagher or Carver or, Grace Hall or
Hilton Coliseum. Yeah.
Like all of those type of places, right? You all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is, I'm welcome to the big show. Right. Yeah. So, but also to take that in the inverse and take that into like a local high school gym, your mat side, you got rowdy fans, you got the benches on each side. It's really cool for the athletes to participate in something along those lines. And I think that giving the fan experience that intensity too, like resonates, and then they get hyped up. And so I'm super excited about what Iowa State is doing in that regard, because then they can, bring other teams in. As far as, the duel itself, once again, Iowa State has, I mean, for the most part of the nation, has really probably surprised some people with some of the wrestling that they've been able to achieve early in the season. Like basically knocking off a whole bunch of people at Wisconsin. So once again, I think also the evolution of some of those younger athletes too, making those big strides, and then also the transfers. Schuyler from Buffalo transferring in, looking probably the best that he's ever looked in his career, in my opinion.
He's jumped up.
And also the evolution of Younger at 197 is, I think he's raised his game even from last year, which is kind of scary to think about. So, super, I would say disappointing on the scoreboard when it came to the team result, but there was some really great matches. I even saw on Twitter and Instagram the scramble between Giovanni Bonilla and crazier is like almost gone viral. It's huge.
Yeah.
Like there's so many
That's
people
the
there.
45-second one where they ended up neutral out of bounds right in front of Grant Henderson, right?
Correct.
Okay. I saw that. So first of all, shout out to Grant part 2. And yeah, just I'll tell you what, that's fun to watch just once as a fan. But if you watch that 4 or 5 times as a coach, and it's the whole concept of high head, far ankle, hip heist, keep, and don't give up, right? Like there's positions there you don't need to give up because even if you get caught, it's only 2. Your kid did a great leg pass where it looked like the Iowa State kid had him sort of dead to rights and came out the back door and comes back up. And it's almost one of those ones as a coach where you're like, man, I wish we gotten it, but we probably neutral is where it should end up fairly because they both wrestled their fannies off in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I just pulled it up here. Like, also big shout out to Tony Hager and IA Wrestle for the stream, and then also doing, having some of the play-by-play as well with Mike. But it's got like almost 250 retweets.
That's
like
awesome.
almost 100 quoted things, and like just seeing the people that are basically discussing high level wrestling like that. And once again, we're using this as a catalyst to say that like, hey, when you watch film or you watch high level wrestling in those intense environments, like wrestlers are built different. We'll just say that.
Well, I think it's clearly if you're a coach and you lose even one match, you're disappointed. So I know Nick and the crew are disappointed at the overall results. But if there's a silver lining, it's a couple things. One, if you had any kids in your room that were overly arrogant, that's not a problem anymore. And number 2 is like a scramble like that the average fan will watch. They might recognize the Iowa State singlet. They're probably not the average. Just Joe Q public's not going to know who Grandview is. And for you guys to be in that video is great. Like, for me at the Olympic trials, there was that match where both sides, the winning guy thought he was losing and the losing guy thought he was winning. And one of my friends is a referee, Kyle Mankiewicz, sends me like a month later, sends me a TikTok video. And I wouldn't know how to set up TikTok if my life depended on it. But it was 1.9 million views of my commentary. Like, hey, these guys both got it wrong. And so sometimes you get escalated or elevated just doing what you're doing. And it's not intentional, but your kid fought like crazy. So did the other kid. It looked, 3 times I thought both sides were going to score. And then I figured, well, if this is a video, probably nobody scores or they wouldn't be posting it. But it was super fun to watch. And, I know your guys, I want to say this, as a guy that coached at junior college, I want to give a shout out to Iowa State for dueling you guys. Because a lot of those schools won't. They won't wrestle a non-Division I school in an environment like that. So shout out to Dresser for doing it, and his kids came ready to wrestle. So it was good.
No, it's really cool. And I think also from a Jason Bryant perspective, big shout out to JB with his wrestling statistical data is now with that loss, the consecutive dual meet streak ended at 116 consecutive collegiate duels won for Grandview. So once again, Iowa State put it all on the line. Grandview put it all on the line out there. And then also to your point, I mean, these, I think I saw an article or a quote from Dresser is like, hey, we were favored at all 10 weights. Like we had to have this type of environment for our kids to realize like, hey, you got a big target on your back. This is. So it was a really cool coaching moment to hear from. But it was also something that like, as a fan of just wrestling in general, you gotta love the ability of like putting it out on the line for your team. Like, hey, we come to scrap today.
Well, you mentioned something, and I think I should shout out the other side. Shout out to Nick for putting that 116 consecutive winning streak dual meets on the line because Nick's a really smart guy. He knew he was an underdog 10 out of 10, and you got to win 5 really to have any chance and then not get bonus. So, I mean, he probably knew going in realistically the winning streak is over. You don't say that out loud, but like mentally, if you had to put $20 on either side of it, you're going to put it on not winning the duel. And he didn't care. It's like, look, this is a chance for our kids to get better. This is a chance to grow our program. So shout to both sides. Shout to Nick for putting that streak on the line. Shout to Dresser for wrestling you guys in that environment. And I'm sure your kids will benefit from it. And I'm sure their kids will benefit from it because they wrestle Iowa in what shapes up to be a pretty interesting dual meet, especially if Spencer doesn't wrestle, which we'll get to. So we'll talk about that. Speaking of interesting dual meets, Arizona State, Mizzou. Okay. So first of all, I try not to criticize anyone. I get criticized for not criticizing people enough, but it's because I've coached and tried to run events and stuff doesn't always go right and your guys lose. I feel terrible for Arizona State. They got to get out of that Pac-12 network relationship because people couldn't watch it. And the duel was unbelievable. So for people that don't know, Arizona State won the duel. They won it 6-4, which matters because Mizzou got bonus at 57, 65, and 74. And the duel could have been bigger for Arizona State. Teamer would have been favored over JQ, like pretty significantly, probably like by 5 points. But Arizona State won all the toss-ups. So Figueroa beat Certain late. McGee has kind of a weirdly close match with Connor Brown. Vasquez beats Hart late. Parco beats Mahler late. So they're up 12-0. JQ gets a tech fall or a major or tech fall. O'Toole gets a major or tech fall. And then at 74, Mizzou gets another bonus win. So it's like 14-12 Missouri. Then the other flip-flop match or coin flip match is Montalvo and Harmon. And I was kind of surprised Mizzou wrestled Harmon because Harmon had just lost to Colton Hawks that Saturday before at the Staley tournament because we were on the mic for it. Montalvo wins that close one. So now it's 15-14. So now even if Rocky Elam majors Norfleet, which wouldn't be easy, and Colton Schultz were to win and it was 18-18, first criteria is 6-4. Rocky wins by decision. Schultz wins by major, so it's 19-17. Second biggest crowd ever at Arizona State. Your boy got to be at the first biggest crowd when they upset Penn State. So Arizona State wrestles pretty well when they get in front of big home crowds, apparently, because they were not favored to win either duel. The depth of Arizona State, especially like plugging in a Figs and winning without teamers, pretty impressive. They've been a trophy team the last 2 years, GT. I mean, that's a huge win for that program.
Yeah, it's exciting to see them just basically continue to like raise their I don't even know like level because it's like, you know, with some of those guys out of the lineup, like Teamer and you know, like that's a guy that's guaranteed points for you, right? So it's like I mean, when you're an Arizona State fan, you think that that's like, hey, guaranteed points. Like he's a stud. I know that he has the ability to basically shut out anybody at any time type situation. And it's like they're still pulling out great wins against extremely talented Missouri team. So in which case, I think, you know, Brian Smith has a group that, you know, they're looking for a trophy too this year.
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to do our team picks, but before that duel, I had Missouri in my top 4. I mean, they have that team they always have where a ton of guys will be in that round of 12. And it's like Certain's a round of 12 guy. Hart's a round of 12 guy. I think Mahler's an All-American. JQ's hopefully gets to that round of 12. O'Toole's obviously an All-American. Mako is a round of 12 guy, you know, ranked in there. They got to figure out 84. They have good problems. They have 3 really good kids. And then Rocky's an All-American. And when I say he's an All-American, he's been an All-American. And then Elam's been in the round of 12 3 times. So they could have, for them, a terrible tournament where they place Mahler, O'Toole, Rocky, or they could have a fantastic tournament and place those 3 guys. O'Toole wins it again. Mahler, who knows we'll talk about 149. But, I mean, Parco might be the number 1 seed. We were going through, but we'll get to that in a minute. But they could place at 25. They could place at 41. They could place at 57. They can place at 74. They might, and they could definitely place at heavyweight. You place 7 guys and plug 1 in the finals, you're in the top 4. I mean, that's going to happen.
That's crazy.
So, but they could have 3. And that's, you know, so, but that duel was crazy. Cornell, Wisconsin. I don't know if anybody, probably nobody in the wrestling world's following this, but Yanni Diakomahalis lost this weekend.
Hey, I saw it on Twitter while I was at the Bill Farrell, and I'm like, I was sitting there right next to like some guys and like Alex Derringer, Jordan Burroughs, like some of these other guys that were like, I was like, hey, look at this. They're like, no way. I'm like,
I feel like there might have been a word between no and way that they said that you've edited out.
And there was another gentleman that was like, because it was, I believe it was on ESPN.
Oh, it was on the bottom line of ESPN?
No, so like, no, like the stream of the duel.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
So then like all of a sudden he like scrolls down on his ESPN app and he's like, oh, it's all the way at the bottom. Like he pulled it up immediately. He's like, I gotta watch what happened. I was like, hey man, here's the results. It's a done deal. He's like, no, I gotta watch it. So like literally stopped watching the international competition that was like 5 feet in front of him on his phone, was like, no, I'm watching the Yanni match right now.
Yeah. So I was at the Life U Open and Tony Ramos was there coaching the red shirts. He goes, Mirikitani, good luck figuring out the rankings this week. I go, we're in a good position now. We just talk about everybody else's rankings. Why? He goes, Yanni lost. I go, sure. I go, sure. Like, like, I just thought he was messing with me. He goes, he lost to Gomez 9-3. I said, come on. He goes, he lost to Gomez 9 and just like walked away, like. So for people that didn't see the match, it was not a fluke. Okay. Gomez got 3 takedowns, 1 feet to back from body lock and an escape. Yanni got 3 escapes. I want to talk about the good part of Yanni. Several people posted this, that, he didn't throw his headgear, didn't throw his anklets, put his gear on, came back out, supported the rest of his team, signed autographs afterwards. I think sometimes we get caught up so much in the winning and losing. And I'm sure it was shocking to Yanni. It's only second loss of his career in college. I think Mark and I were talking about our confidence picks for the season. Like if you had to pick one guy to win nationals, and with Spencer Lee's health in the air and Gable Stevenson's status up in the air, like Yanni was probably our number 1. Like most confident. So his character, was on display. So I don't want to bypass that. In terms of the match, it's super interesting because we watched Nero Johnson convincingly beat Gomez. And then Gomez convincingly beats Yanni. I mean, you're a guy that loves technique and everything else. What are your takeaways from that?
I think going back to like how professional Yanni was about, basically, like his second career loss, like basically, came back out and, did interviews, talked to everybody. I think I had heard him say, like, he's like, hey, I just got to get back to work. I got to get better. And it was like, what a frame of mind for an athlete to, basically have, a substantial loss in his career, meaning his second while in college, and just, go about his business and just say, hey, listen, I got to get better. But, as far as the technical aspect of that match, I mean, we could spend an entire pod on just, the tactics of like that match and how it actually looked and, like what Yanni was doing and how Gomez was able to basically finish the shots on Yanni that like were like almost without scramble. So it was like clean finishes, coming up to the body lock, getting that. And then, basically proceeded to continue to wrestle and didn't necessarily put it up on like, hey, I'm gonna put the skates on now. I'm up by 4. Like, work the edge. Like those boys just like went toe to toe and continued to scrap. So it wasn't like a fluke match. It was just a great wrestling match between 2 extremely high level wrestlers. It's
Gomez's favorite line, scared money don't make money. He said he woke up feeling dangerous that morning. That stuff's good for wrestling, right? Like those are stories that get people involved. The other thing is Gomez scored at least 2 different ways. He scored to the body and he scored on a couple reattacks. I was really impressed with how he beat the splits because Yanni's so good in those splits. And so I think if people are interested in watching how do you beat the splits, that's a film, or or technique worth watching. So I'm going to go to Flo's rankings here because I was trying to look at this last night and we didn't, and they weren't up yet. So this is what they said. They go, here's the question of the week. Who takes the top spot at 149? We chose to go with Yanni, 3-time NCAA champ, defeated Gomez twice last year. So it's body of work. So makes it even more clear to keep Yanni at 1 as Gomez's loss is to Pinheiro Johnson 2 weeks ago. While Johnson is 4-0, last year he lost to, and they named these people. Had Gomez not suffered that loss, he'd probably be number 1, but Yanni stays. There's a case for Jonathan Milner. He's 10-0 and was the number 2 ranked wrestler last week. Milner closed out last year by losing to Sasso, a wrestler that Gomez and Yanni both beat. Doug Zaff beat Caleb Henson, and Caleb Henson had beat Sammy Sasso. So I'm probably going to miss a couple of these, but let me just go through this. Yanni has lost to Gomez. I'm just going through this in their order. Gomez has lost to Pinheiro Johnson. Jonathan Milner's undefeated. Parco is undefeated and beat Brock Mahler. Sasso has lost to Caleb Henson. Max Murin is undefeated, but I don't think he's ever All-American. Yaya is undefeated. I don't even know if he's wrestled this year. I don't think I've seen a result for him. And was an All-American 2 years ago. Mahler redshirted last year, was an All-American the year before a couple times, but lost to Parco. Pinheiro Johnson is undefeated and beat Gomez. And Caleb Henson beat Sasso and just lost to Doug Zaff. So this is where I miss first name Mark here because we were texting each other. Let me say this, first of all. 149 is a very interesting weight. We were looking at a bunch of these guys are going to hit each other, like in duels or at the Scuffle or at the Cliff Keen Vegas tournament. So it's not like Jonathan Milner doesn't have a good schedule the rest of the way, or that Parco doesn't have a good schedule the rest of the way, because those are the guys that are sort of isolated in conferences where there's not a bunch of other top 5, 6 guys in their conference. There's nobody else in the Pac-12 or in the SoCon that's nails. But they got a bunch of non-conference matches, so this will likely sort itself out. So this is a really interesting thing. I hear the argument for Yanni at 1, but there's an argument for Pinheiro Johnson at number 1. There's an argument for Jonathan Milner at number 1, and there's an argument for Parco at number 1. And it really just becomes how much does last year get further and further away in the rearview mirror? And how strong is your body of work? Like Yanni has an unbelievable body of work, so they basically gave him a mulligan. I mean, that's what they did. And we've done that before too. Like, I mean, it happens. Like Grandview is going to be ranked number 1 in NAI last week just because they lost a D1 duel to a really good team doesn't change anything. I know you don't do rankings, but I mean, would you have Yanni at 1 or would you have one of those other 3 guys at 1?
Well, I think once again, I'm new to the ranking system. Also, disclaimer in general, I'm not a ranking guy.
You're not a nerd like me and Mark.
Right.
You got cool hair and you travel. It's okay.
Right, exactly. You got a lot more tactical advantage on this type of conversation. But I mean, I also think that like sometimes let's say maybe like in other sports, something like that, maybe a number 1 that suffers a loss doesn't necessarily move.
Football is probably the best one to compare it to, right? Because we all follow the football rankings, right?
Right.
And it's who you lose to, a lot of it. And the other thing that we talk about is losing late in the year hurts you in football way more than earlier in the year. Like if 2 teams finish 11-1 and one team, like Michigan's going to play Ohio State Saturday, and one of those teams is probably out of the college football playoff but they'll be 11-1. And like a USC that lost earlier in the year could sneak in because they'd be a conference champion. So there's a bunch of stuff like that.
Yep.
Let me rephrase it another way. If I had to bet on somebody to win 49, I'm still betting on Yanni. I don't think that's a huge – I would assume you agree with that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that, right? So it's like, I mean, okay, so back to that original, like, who would I put there? I would probably say Milner, because he was number 2. If I were to then dethrone Yanni from the number 1 spot, and I think Milner he just won, I think it was like one of the opens this past weekend, where it was a star-studded weight class, and wrestled really well. And
Keystone Classic.
Yeah, Keystone Classic. There you go. Yeah, I mean, like, once again, there's no fault to Milner going 11-0, and then also, like, with Parko beating Mahler, like, that's a huge win. But, like, I wouldn't drop Yanni to like 7 or 8 or something ridiculous. But I definitely think that Milner, if we were going to I would put Milner there before Parko, just because of, like, the recent, yeah. But once again, not a ranking guy, but I love to see the chaos.
Yeah. So this is what I can tell you. And this is probably where, as a coach, you've sat in plenty of seating meetings. The criteria for the national seating, or the seating, last year's body of work does not count at all. So there's certain criteria that don't come into play yet, like whether you're a conference champion or not. But if you assume, like, okay, this person would be the conference champion because they're the best guy, win-loss record, winning percentage is a big part of it, and head-to-head is the biggest criteria of the formula. So it's probably Milner, Parko, Panero Johnson are your top 3 in some order. Then I think Gomez becomes 4, because the way it works is, like, if my only loss is to you, once you're ranked, then my loss doesn't hurt me anymore. Then I think Yanni would be above, or right after Gomez would be Yanni. And then I think maybe it's Mahler, because his only loss was to Parko. And then the Sasso, Doug Zaff, Caleb Henson thing's a mess too. And then Yaya and Murin haven't wrestled really either at all or anybody. But this is a weight that I thought we'd see a bunch of chaos at 2 through 12, and 1 wouldn't change. And I'm interested. This is a lot. We're recording this on Tuesday to get it out before Thanksgiving, so we don't have all the results, and we haven't sorted out on fantasygrade.com. And the results of this weekend are super light. There's hardly any meets this week, so we can kind of revisit this. But super interesting weight class and what happens there. So the other thing that's going on is the NWCA All-Star meet. So I'm going to see GT in a couple weeks, so we can put wings, or we can put the size of our fonts on our phones on this if you want. So, all right. So here's what we got. I'll read them off to you. You can pick first on the odds, and I'll pick first on the evens. And we'll just write down if we disagree. McKee and Terrakina.
I'll take Pat McKee.
I will as well. Lucas Bird, McGee. I'll take McGee.
I'll take Bird.
Okay, so that's a difference. All right. Andonian, Will Lewan.
I'll take Andonian.
I will as well. Cole Matthews, Alirez. I'm going to take Cole Matthews.
I'll take Cole Matthews as well.
All right, Kalani, Corbett, and Kimber. I'm going to go first here. I'm going to switch the order up because Kalani Corbett is Kevin Corbett's sister, and I coached him, so I'm taking Corbett.
Yeah, I'll take Corbett as well.
Okay. Elena and Jesse Lee.
Take Elena.
I will as well. All right. Sasso Gomez.
Fireworks.
I'm going to take Gomez.
Just to want to see the world on fire, I'll take Sasso.
Okay. Brooks Keckheisen.
I'll take Brooksy, even though, like, I think this is probably the best match. I want to see this match. I want to see these guys wrestle. These guys just come to scrap.
I want to see that match, but I really want to see this next match. Like, maybe we do an over-under on cradles, like, just not if they get them, but locks. So I'm taking O'Toole over Hamidi, but man, like this is like, what a great match, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to take O'Toole as well.
All right. Can you help me pronounce this last name here? Wachakuyu?
Yeah.
That's right? Okay.
That's what I'm going to go with for right now. I'll have to consult USA Wrestling, but
If you're going to be a smart aleck, you could have said Boyd.
right. No. I mean, I'll take a Lara in that match though.
I will too. Peyton Bruce and Shilson. I was with the Life people, and I'm like, Shilson's legit. So I'll take Shilson.
I'll take Peyton.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then, all right. So this is interesting because David Carr, Quincy Mondays started at 57, but this is like Carr Monday part 9, probably. Who you got?
I'll take David Carr.
Me too. I feel like I have to take Rocky and you have to take Warner based on where we live. Is that correct?
I mean, it's just a flat out, yeah, has to happen.
Okay, I'll take Rocky. Cassiope, Kirkfleet. Who you got?
First name Big, last name Tone.
Okay, I'll take Kirk.
Yeah.
That gives us 5 different matches, so somebody will win. And I have Starrett. You know what? I'm going to take Mackay. I'm going to take the upset.
All right, I'll take Carter.
Yeah, there you go. So it might be 3-3. All right. So that's pretty awesome. All right, we got a few minutes left. It's been a blessed year for me. I've been able to do a lot of things I wanted in wrestling, and some things in my personal life have been really good. So but I spoke to Gary Abbott yesterday. I want to thank Gary for putting us on the air, for supporting what we do. I want to thank all the people that wrestle. I mean, I like the coaches, the people that are kind. I want to thank the Hall of Fame for putting me involved with their tournament. You and Mark, it's fun to talk to you guys. You know, I talk to you guys pretty much every week, whether we are doing this or not. So it's fun to be on the air. And, you know, I never forget, I'm probably literally at my age still riding my mom and dad's coattails. So I want to thank my mom and dad for being the people they are, both as human beings and as pillars in the wrestling community, and, you know, allowing me to have the framework to start, not from zero where a lot of other people had to start. So I just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And then I'll give the last word to you.
No, I couldn't said it better myself, buddy. You know, live a very blessed life, very fortunate to be able to do the things that I'm able to do. I love and respect the wrestling community with the utmost passion. We have some of the best fan bases, people, coaches, athletes in the entire sports world. Just so, hey, happy Thanksgiving to everybody that's watching, listening, everybody with USA Wrestling. Thank you for the opportunity for us to be able to do what we do and to talk about the sport that we love. So couldn't be happier with how this year has progressed, and really looking forward to continuing this and getting through the holidays here. But very blessed for the opportunity.
I think on behalf of USA Wrestling, I want to thank Nike, which is Grant, Shane, and Eddie. I don't think a lot of people know all the stuff you guys do, and a lot of stuff comes up at the last minute, and a lot of stuff has to be changed. And you have one of the best outlooks on life in terms of rolling with that. And I respect that a lot about you, man, because like every day you get at least 5 curveballs. And I'm trying to be more flexible in my life. A mutual friend of ours called me Larry David the other day. It's not altogether wrong. So it's pretty apropos. I'm trying to be more flexible. I'm trying to understand that sometimes the world just happens and it's nobody's fault. But when you're surrounded by people that are good at that, even if they're younger than you still have to keep your eyes open and learn from them. And definitely want to thank Shane for all the support that he and has allowed you to support us with Missouri Border Brawl. And now we're taking it on the road. So I want to thank you guys for that. And I spoke to Mark, and I know definitely he's thankful for the fam. And, got to be with him when his son got married this summer. So shout out to the Ostrander clan. And Mark was a guy that worked tirelessly behind the scenes with no credit for years to make sure that our rankings were as good, if not better than anybody's in the business, and gave up a lot of time for no notoriety and no money. So Mark's one of the real dudes. So I want to thank him as well. So hopefully next week we'll be talking about what flavor wings I'm getting when I see you, or what wings I'm buying you, one or the other. And,
for sure.
For sure. So for GT, for Mark, who's absent, I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening. See you all soon. Happy Thanksgiving.